Binge the full week ad-free over at patreon.com/inspireddisorder.
What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Coming to America, the comedy classic from 1988, starring, of course, Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. So many great actors in this movie. One of the great things about Eddie Murphy movies, especially more of the comedic ones, is that he gets a lot of actors in cameo spots. A lot of people in this movie. A lot of great appearances in this movie. This movie, of course, opens with just a gorgeous scene of the Zamunda, the kingdom for which Eddie Murphy is the prince. This is a fairy tale story about a prince looking for true love as opposed to the arranged marriage that his parents want to do. So he wants to find a real woman, smart woman, somebody that is independent. He's looking for a real woman, a strong female lead, let's say, which is something that Hollywood is currently trying to look for on a regular basis. So Eddie Murphy a bit ahead of the curve on that one. But yeah, despite the fact that the woman he actually finds in this movie doesn't really end up being a big part of the movie. But yeah, this movie's great. Of course, like I said, the opening sequence is beautiful. Just how they decorated the palace. All of the costuming is amazing. The dancing is amazing. Everything's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful scene to introduce you to these characters. Of course, there's like the classic bathing scene. And then choosing to go to Queens, because the name Queens, just great. Every aspect of this movie it's so good. It's been a while since I had seen it. All the characters that not only Eddie Murphy plays, but Arsenio Hall. So many characters, which is a thing. It becomes a big hallmark for Eddie Murphy movies. At least in a big chunk of his career is him playing these multiple characters. And Arsenio Hall is right up there with him, doing just as many characters. Of course, the barber shop, where all of the kind of the patrons and employees of the barber shop are played by Arsenio Hall, and it just has scenes of them bullshitting, which are hilarious. Hilarious scenes. Doesn't really add much to the story, but they're characters that kind of stick around, and they kind of play an integral part. But it's just so hilarious. It's also amazing the makeup that they have in this movie, to kind of cover up physically to make it difficult to even, kind of it makes it difficult to realize or to compare the actual actors who are playing those characters and the characters themselves. It's not like, just putting on a fat suit or whatever, but it's a lot of involved makeup, and they're very unique characters, and just really shows how talented Eddie Murphy is as an actor, as just as an actor, as a comedian as well, but mostly an actor. I mean, he really, same with Arsenio Hall. It's amazing that Arsenio Hall doesn't have a gigantic film career alongside Eddie Murphy, because his performance in this is amazing as well, and how they really just disappear into those characters in the barbershop, as well as other characters like the dirty priest guy. There's trying to think of all of them. There's a lot of them spread throughout, but yeah, I love it. So he goes to Queens, and it's I love the contrast in styles of surroundings, from them going to their palace in Zamunda to just he wants to go to the grungiest, cheapest. He's slumming it in Queens, let's say, to find his true love. And it's cool. It actually reminded me of parts of Denver where I used to live. I used to live on the Aurora side of Denver. So a little bit more poverty, but a lot more character to the streets as well. A lot more street art, a lot of interesting people walking around, but also that kind of feel. The apartment that he's in kind of reminded me of the apartment I had in Denver, and it's I don't know. It was a romantic time for, a part of my life, as it were, kind of following a dream, which is similar to what he's doing in this movie. And when he sees the woman that he wants to be with in this movie, uh, I bought it. I mean, the fact that you go from the women that he was, from him being a prince, where they would do whatever he said. They were basically slaves to him, or would have been. She would have been a slave to him in a lot of ways. And the lead is the woman that he see, what is her name? I'm totally not gonna find it right now. But yeah, it makes sense. Like it's one of those things where it's a lot of movies. They'll tell you that these two people, like there's an attraction, but it's pretty clear in this movie. And how much he spends is funny, in contrast to how much he wants to look like he's spending. It's just a hilarious film. If nobody's seen it, it's like the greatest fish out of water, mixed with, like, a fairy tale of a prince trying to find love, but she's got a boyfriend, and her dad, of course, is hilarious, running the McDowells. I believe it's McDowells. I could be wrong, with the golden arches instead of, or arcs instead of arches. Like he rips off everything from McDonald's and just changes it slightly to avoid lawsuits. Which is pretty similar, pretty common in a lot of ways to when you're growing up poor. You maybe not rip-offs of McDonald's or fast food places, but you go into grocery stores, and the cheapest stuff is the private label stuff in grocery stores, where it's the generic brands, the brands that the store owns, where it's like a can of beer that just says beer on it. um like that's kind of the feeling of, or they design the thing to look similar to the kind of higher end competitor. Very funny, very funny. All of it's funny. The story's great. uh you know it's the soundtrack has the I mean it's so 80s, the soundtrack. It's a Not only is it a saxophone, which is an instrument that's kind of sprinkled across most 80s movies, but it's like this heavily synthesized, like completely electronic saxophone, which I find to be an extra level, because synthesized music was also big in the 80s too. So having the combination of, like, one of the most common instruments played on 80s movies being the saxophone, having that instrument electrified for this movie makes it a just kind of a next layer of, makes it funny. It makes it a funnier instrumental. It still falls in line with kind of what the trend was for movie soundtracks, but then tweaked it a bit to make it funnier. And for that to be also the kind of the theme song for Soul Glow, which is the woman that Eddie Murphy's character falls in love with, is engaged to be married, or she's dating, and there's like a proposal ish throughout the movie. But his family is the kind of the Soul Glow. They own the Soul Glow, which is hilarious. Everything in this movie is hilarious. There's also a scene where Eddie Murphy's on a date with his bride to be, and he's walking down the street, and he just taken all the money away from Arsenio Hall's character because he made the apartment look too good. Which, that hot tub, by the way, in the apartment is, I can't imagine. I don't know why that's like the hot tub. Everybody should like that kind of minimalist style of a hot tub. I don't understand why that's not more popular in general in real life. Anyway, that's a complete sidetrack. But they're on this date, and he passes by these two homeless guys, and he gives them the envelope of money. And the two homeless guys are Randolph and Mortimer from Trading Places, which is another hilarious Eddie Murphy movie. It's not necessarily his movie; it's kind of him and Dan Aykroyd, but still those two guys. So this is almost like a sequel in a way. It lives in the same universe as Trading Places, which is kind of a fun little thing, you know? Like so many movies want to make a big deal of creating a cinematic universe for any movie that gets any kind of traction. Uh, but stuff like this, like little subtle like nods to other films in that kind of way where they're connected in this universe, I find to be because it's a lot less. You don't have to have seen Trading Places for that scene to make sense. Where the flip side, where if you were to compare like how DC runs their franchises, it's like you have to have done all of the research going into a movie because it's just a movie of references that makes no sense unless you have all that baggage taken care of. So the little nod to giving the Randolph and Mortimer the cash is pretty hilarious. Of course, true love wins. I mean, the how this movie was going to end was never really a question. You know, when you have this type of a film, you know where it's going. You know, there's going to be a happily ever after moment. Um, but how they get there is great. And it's a really good movie that holds up, and it's probably the best of the Eddie Murphy playing other characters, and Arsenio Hall adds so much to this movie. And the great part during the credits of this film, they kind of show all of the characters and kind of, they let it be known how many of the characters were played by Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall, which I bet was a big surprise in theaters because they truly do disappear into those characters with the great makeup. Um, but yeah, great movie all around, top to bottom. I enjoyed it. It holds up. Great Eddie Murphy movie. But yeah, check it out. It's on Amazon Prime right now. If you want to watch it, along with the newly released sequel coming to America. But yeah, check out Coming to America.
What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.
Coming to America. The follow up, the sequel to Coming to America is Coming to America, and they're coming to America again. This movie just came out on Amazon Prime, and it was way better than it had any business being. There is a lot going on in this film, which I would say is kind of a downside, but they were able to juggle. It's just a movie where they all of the old characters are brought back, plus new characters. You got Eddie Murphy doing a bunch of characters. You got Arsenio Hall doing a bunch of characters again. And of course, the addition of Wesley Snipes is amazing in this film. There's a lot of new people. Tracy Morgan's in this. James Earl Jones comes back to this film. Morgan Freeman's in this film. So many people. But then all of the old characters are back. Not only the old characters, the kind of the different characters that Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall play, like the barbershop crew. But there's also new characters. This movie opens in the same way that the original Coming to America opens. It's the big kind of like you're flying through Zamunda, through the mountains of Zamunda, and then you see this gigantic palace in the middle of this gorgeous landscape. And you kind of go inside, and everything in this movie, even though it has all of the old stuff, everything's been upgraded. Like the makeup is upgraded in a good way, which, for high def video, of course, you're going to want to make sure that's on point. You got, I believe that the way the palace is shown in this film, it's upgraded, where the first one, you could tell the first one, it's just this giant studio that they decorated, where this one feels like more of a real kind of a place. um all the characters, the story is interesting, how they kind of have to go back to the US, although most of this movie does take place in Zamunda, which is nice because it's basically he finds out it's his dad is dying. He's going to become king. He's only had daughters, so his three daughters, according to Zamunda rule, it has to be passed down to a male. So they're trying to. One of the things, there's a lot going on. So part of it is him trying to marry off his oldest daughter to the son of Wesley Snipes' character, which is like a rival. He like he's a leader for like a rival kind of militia army in Africa. But they're like choreographed like a dance troupe, which is funny. Like there's the moments, and even when you go to their like training facility, like they're like doing dancing, and they're playing like a Dance Revolution. Like they're doing kind of, it's like probably the most ridiculous of this movie, even though like tonally I feel like the sequel nails the same tone as the first one. It's just there is so much going on. So to avoid marrying his daughter off, he finds out that he has a bastard child. That during his time in Queens, he ended up hooking up with Leslie Jones during, and there's a lot of flashbacks to the original movie, which is cool. And there's actually an extended scene from the time when him and Arsenio Hall were in the bar in Queens, kind of, and it was going through that montage of different women that they were kind of interviewing from the first movie. It's kind of an extension of that, to where one of the girls that they met at that bar took him back to her place or his place, and they smoked weed, and he ended up having sex and totally forgot about it. So that's kind of how they introduced this male character, this bastard son. So he ends up having to go back to find him. Of course, he finds him right away, but then brings him back along with his mom, who's played by Leslie Jones. All the actors are pretty great in this. All the new characters, and then his uncle is played by Tracy Morgan, which is hilarious. Tracy Morgan, and like the characters in that family are all hilarious, like comedian, stand-up comics. So it's like it's so interesting to watch this movie, because it's like it's hitting on all of the same beats as the first movie, but it's doing it in a different way, and it's pulling it off. I would say. I would say it's like it's different enough to where it doesn't feel like I'm just watching, like, it's like the same movie again. Like Hangover 2 is basically Hangover 1. It's just set in a different location. Like that's more, that didn't pull it off, where I believe this one did, because it added a lot of new characters, but it still was able to balance and have the old characters pop in for different cameos. Definitely a feel good movie. This movie was, it's like so good. I watched them back to back. I rewatched Coming to America, the original, and then directly after that watched this sequel. And it's just a great, and it's crazy that they are 30 years apart from each other. But yeah, it's great. His wife, the female lead from the first movie, gets more to do in this movie, which is nice. There's the whole, I mean, obviously the fish out of water thing is his son and mom living in the palace, and him trying to find his own voice, and him going through the same things that Eddie Murphy's character was going through in the first one, which is nice. But then there's also the layer of, hey, this, movie understands how things have changed, and there's a lot of actual commentary with the guys in the barbershop crew, how they're discussing when Eddie Murphy first goes back to the US to get his son. Like there's this scene where they're updating Eddie Murphy's character on like all of the changes that society has gone through, and how like it's also takes place during the time of Obama's presidency. So it's, a little bit, it's not dealing with the rise of Nazis again. But yeah, I think this movie, that's the one thing I think this movie doesn't hit, is that it's trying to be woke, in that like understanding that his daughter should be the next heir to the kingdom, um and changing how like Zamunda is still trapped in the past with a lot of their things. Like I think the movie focuses a lot more on the fish out of water story with his son, which his son, I mean, it's an interesting thing, but I don't think like he's kind of a lot of this movie is put on his shoulders, and I think he did fine. The actor that played his son, which was it Jermaine Fowler? Is that right? Yeah, that looks like it's right. Um, like a lot of this movie's placed on his shoulders. He's basically the Eddie Murphy of this movie, except for he's not playing a bunch of characters, but it is kind of focused on him and his experience. Uh, Versus, I think if they wanted to be a little bit more on the progressive side, they would have focused on like there's really nothing his daughter does in this movie. You see her training a lot, like fight training a lot, but other than that, you don't really get to know his daughter at all. So like the fact that it's predictable that she's going to be the heir. You can tell, like just like the first one, you can tell where this movie's going. It's not a movie that feels interested in kind of hiding the directions it's going. It's more about the characters and all the cameos and just kind of how they're able to hold everything together, which is pretty miraculous. But I feel the focus should have been more on her, and I think it would have been a better movie. I think it would have been, instead of it just being some side thing at the end where it's like, of course she ends up being the next ruler in charge of Zamunda, but it focuses more on him, and I don't feel like he, as an actor, I mean, it was okay. I don't know. Like, it was good. I just felt that it was too much on him. Um, but other than that, like that's kind of my only mild complaint with this movie. Overall, I loved it. I loved how it ended. Oh, the only thing that I really did hate in this movie, which sucks that it was so bad, is the CG animals. They're clearly CG. It's sad because so much of Coming to America is practical effects and doing high quality practical effects. So to see blatant CG animals, some one of which is a kind of a like a big point in this movie where the kid has to prove himself and get the whiskers from a lion. The lion completely fake, like just nothing looked good about any of the fake animals. The way they ran, they didn't feel like they were there. There's a scene where this elephant shows up, and it's like complete like I don't know. It bummed me out to see the CG animals, but everything else was amazing. A lot of product placement too in this movie, which I thought was kind of funny. It seemed like a thing that happened a lot in like the 80s and 90s, like just blatant product placement. And this movie had it, so maybe it's a throwback to that. And then also during the credits, they showed bloopers, which I thought was hilarious to in addition. And there's like a post-credit scene in this movie, by the way, which is fun as well. I believe it's with the barbershop crew, specifically the Jewish dude played by Eddie Murphy, talking to Baba, who was Arsenio Hall, a new character he played in this. But overall, a movie that I'm surprised it came together as well as it did. Had a little bit of problems with so much going on. The focus, I think, was a little off, but it delivered on so many things. I loved it so much. Coming to America, check it out now on Amazon Prime. Get yourself a free subscription to Kindle Unlimited when you go through my link, inspireddisorder.com/Kindle. That's unlimited reading and listening on any device. If you're a fan of stories and books and all of the things that can be printed in Word or read aloud, get yourself a free trial of Kindle Unlimited. Go through my link, inspireddisorder.com/Kindle. Sign up now and enjoy your reading. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on IGTV, YouTube, and everywhere else podcasts are found. Binge the full week ad-free over at patreon.com/inspireddisorder. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!